court, next case in the docket. The plaintiffs say that they sold the defendant a purebred AKC bloodline puppy, but the defendants refused to abide by the rules and they owe the plaintiffs big time. The defendants say they aren't interested in any prestigious bloodline stuff. They did nothing wrong and they owe zero. It's the case of not keeping Fido fit.
Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Morris, you are suing Mr. and Mrs. Clymore for $3,000 and/or the return of a dog that you sold to them. Tell me what happened.
Yes, in June 2020, we had 3 French Bulldog puppies born, and we made a website advertising the puppies, in which Ms. Clymore saw and contacted me in July 20th. She told me that she was interested in perhaps seeing our dogs, and so I sent her some more videos and photographs of what we had available.
Okay.
I also informed her at that time that our puppy contract was also on our puppy page and that she could click on the puppy contract and review it in full before deciding which of the dogs she may or may not want.
Okay. And which
Our
dog did she pick?
contract-
Can you see the dogs up there?
Yes, she picked the dark colored one. He's a reverse Brindle. He was more expensive because of his unique color and coat pattern.
Okay. Oh my gosh, look at these. How old are they in these pictures?
They're
Says
about
6 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks old. Okay.
And that's him at 8 weeks.
Okay. All right. What'd you name the dog, folks, Mr. and Mrs. Clymore?
Oscar.
Oscar. All right. Tell me what happens. By the way, what's the cost of the French Bulldog?
He's $3,000.
Okay. And is this the first time you breed your dog or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you sell them the dog and there's a contract that they sign, correct?
Right.
You folks signed a contract, correct, Mr. and Mrs. Clymore?
Yes,
All right.
I did.
Okay. And in your contract, you have a provision about the dog having to be neutered. Tell me about that provision.
It says the buyer agrees to have the puppy neutered by 7 months of age, period.
Okay.
And that's where she initialed.
Okay.
At that time, once they show proof that they did comply with the contract and they had the dog neutered, then we mail them their AKC paperwork.
Okay. And why do you wait until then to mail them the AKC paperwork? Until proof of neutering?
Because we want to make sure that it actually gets done. Because once they receive the AKC paperwork, they can register the dog in their name and they can get full access to his pedigree.
Right.
That shows his lineage and all
Right.
the champions and
Right.
all the different
And
health
you don't
tests
want to
and-
dilute the power of the lineage of the dog that you own by having everybody else also
Right.
have that. Okay, I got it. So now
Yeah.
they signed that contract, and what happens? They've had the dog now 7 months, and when you call them, what do they tell you about whether they've neutered the dog?
They said they were thinking they weren't sure that they wanted to do that anymore.
Okay, so let me talk to
Yeah,
you,
I'm
Mr. and
informed
Mrs. Clymore. What happened? Because I'm looking at the contract, and the contract does say the buyer agrees to spay, neuter said puppy by 7 months of age. Limited AKC papers will be sent to the buyer after proof of spay neuter is received by the seller. And then she initials right after those 2 sentences. So let me talk to you, Mr. and Mrs. Clymore. I don't know who wants to talk to me first, but what's going on?
Okay, so my wife initiated the purchase of the dog as a present for me. Okay? And we have another bulldog, which is actually an English bulldog, and he's about a year older than Oscar. So my first ever experience with AKC registration was years ago. And at that time,
Did you know about the contract, or she surprised you with the dog? I'm not understanding.
she surprised me with the dog.
So she signed the contract on her own.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so let me talk to you a moment, Ms. Clymore. You know that contract says, and you signed that you would neuter the dog. So what was your plan when you signed the contract that said you would neuter the dog?
I thought it was if we wanted the AKC papers, we would have to have him neutered. We don't plan on having him be a stud, any kind of puppies or anything, so it just...
Is your other French Bulldog a girl or a boy?
Boy,
It's a boy, it's
it's
a
English.
Okay, English Bulldog. Yes, they are. Sorry, I thought you said French. All right. So you get the dog, and then did you know anything about the provision about neutering?
No, this just surprised me when at 7 months later. So what I was
No,
getting
that's
here with,
false.
Hold on 1 minute. It's a surprise to him, not to her, he says. Was he there
No.
picking up the dog?
He was there and she
Okay.
asked about it at the pickup.
He was there,
Okay.
She
and
told
he
me
did talk to her husband.
before she purchased him, she told me that she had to ask him first. So it was never a surprise.
Okay,
He even
either
asked
way,
about neutering.
okay, it's fine. Let me hear from Mr. Clyburn. Mr. Clyburn, at 7 months old, you make the decision you don't want to neuter the dog?
So did the defendants violate the terms of their agreement about getting the puppy neutered? Let's listen.
it didn't matter to me about neutering him because I didn't want the paperwork anyway. I mean, what am I going to do with it? So
Okay.
the only value with the paperwork is if I was wanting to breed him or sell him.
Right. So he's willing to take the heat and not get the AKC papers because he doesn't even intend to breed him. Why isn't that a sufficient punishment for this breach of the contract? In other words, you're demanding the return of the dog or $3,000 for the breach of the contract. And he's saying, nah, the only remedy for not neutering him is I don't get the AKC papers. And why isn't he right?
Because if you don't want the full registration, it doesn't matter if you want papers or not. Because he's not neutering, it usually costs more money. They did not pay the extra money to not have the neutering and to get
That's
the
not
full
true.
AKC.
No, just a second. The man can't breed the dog because he doesn't have the AKC papers, right?
He can breed it. He can
Well, he
still
can't
breed it and
he
sell it
can-
without papers.
And just sell it without papers, but it won't compete
Unless
with
money,
your
yeah.
business and the lineage of your dog because no one's ever going to know who the sire was or who the, what's the other word, dam? I don't know. It's not,
Right, there's no value.
right, there's no, yeah, his dog may be a hound dog and impregnate everybody in the neighborhood, every other dog. That could happen. But when he sells those pups, he can't compete with your business as a breeder, and he certainly won't dilute your lineage because you're not giving him the AKC papers, right?
They can still charge people to use him as a stud, and other people can pay them thousands of dollars to.
Nobody's going to pay them thousands of dollars, sweetheart.
No.
Nobody's doing that. Nobody's paying them thousands of dollars because he doesn't have AKC papers.
What I'm hearing, Your Honor, is that the Clymores wish to have full registration. They don't want to do
Oh, no, they're not going to get anything. They're not getting any registration. I think that's the punishment that fits the crime because it stops them from competing with you. It's just a French bulldog without papers. It does not compete with your lineage. It can't. So it doesn't cause you any damage financially or
Your Honor,
business-wise.
they can't change their mind. There is still a value in a market. And, we didn't breed the French Bulldogs for any monetary gain. We love the breed. We breed them for temperament. So they do have a great French Bulldog.
Well, you did sell him for $3,000, so don't tell me you didn't.
I'll be honest with you, Your Honor, if you do your research, these French Bulldogs sell to $3,000 to $5,000.
Oh, no, I agree.
So they-
I agree. But I'm saying it is a
That's right.
business, I mean, it's not,
It is, but
right. Okay, I hear what you're saying, and you feel like they can't change their mind. And you're right, they can't change their mind willy-nilly, and there's a consequence to changing their mind.
The defendants say they refused to neuter their puppy because it changes the dog's disposition. But did they violate their contract in the process? Let's go back into the courtroom and find out.
You can sue them because they breached the contract. There's a consequence. But then it's up to me to decide what the appropriate penalty is. And you want me to either make them give you the dog, that is not happening, or you want me to make them pay you $6,000 for the dog. And I'm not going to
No,
do
we
that
did
either.
not ask for $3,000 to get full rights. That's only $1,000 more. That's all we wanted to sue for.
Okay, so hold on. What you want to do is you don't mind if he breeds,
Right.
but you just want him to pay you $1,000 more. Well, that's interesting.
Right.
Let's
that's what
see.
you have to.
I am now Monty Hall from Let's Make a Deal. Are you in any way, shape, or form interested in that, Mr. Kleinmore?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So, but I've got to decide what the punishment is. The punishment for their breach, because it is absolutely a breach on their part. And I believe that the punishment is then you don't get to compete because that's in there so that you don't compete with her lineage. So you don't get to do it so they don't have to give you any AKC papers. He has always been fine with that. That, I believe, is the appropriate measure of your damages. I take away from him the ability to compete with you by saying he doesn't get any papers at all. and that is how I'm gonna rule. So I'm ruling in favor of the defendant in this case, and I am making very clear that you will never see AKC papers on this dog. You understand that, Mr. Kleinmore, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that is my verdict.
Mr. and Ms. Morris, you heard the judge. You're going to have to change your contracts, I guess, depending upon the outcome of this case. What do you think?
I think that the Clymore's word means nothing. I think they should have read the contract beforehand, and I think people should not breed. I think you should be referred to a rescue.
All right. Well, listen, I'm sorry, but you don't prevail in this case. What's your reaction now, Mr. and Ms. Clymore?
He never did say to me, hey, if you want to breed that dog, just give us an extra $1,000 and we'll give you breeding rights. He never said that, and I wouldn't have done it because I didn't want to breed him. And Oscar's a great dog the way he is, and I don't want to neuter him, so I don't want to change his personality at all.
All right, let's get Harvey's interpretation of this. This is a really amazing case. What do you think, Harvey?
You know, it's an interesting case because ultimately the plaintiff's got no money because the remedy here is just keeping the papers until the defendants comply, and the defendants aren't going to comply, so they're never going to get the papers showing that the dog has this kind of bloodline. What they could have done is put liquidated damages in the contract, and that means that you could write a clause saying that damages are going to be hard to compute, but if you violate the terms of the agreement, you will automatically pay us, say, $1,000. That is a way of getting money if the other side refuses to comply with the contract. But that clause wasn't in the case, and that's why the plaintiff's got no money.